Good morning, everybody, or should I say, God morgon allesammans. Today we've got Petra Tegman with us. Petra, you are a Swede, but you're working across many geographies. You're head of the palliative care program for Britannia Stiftelsen, also known as now the Bethany Foundation. And welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So today we're interested in a lot of things. We're interested in the work that you're doing around palliative care. We're hoping that you're also going to tell us a bit about how technology plays a role in palliative care. And we're interested in the work that you're doing in Sweden to understand more about the Swedish care sector. And perhaps the care model in itself as well needs some explanation, but also the work that you're doing outside of Sweden and the Sylvia Home certification that I've also just directly translated. And then we'll have to do away with all our other questions that were popping up as we go.
Sorry, Petra, I'd like to know more about you. How did you end up in this loving sector?
Oh, that is a long story. I actually I studied economics in high school because I was confused, as many teenagers are, not knowing what to become when I get older. So after I started school, I was out of work for a while, and a friend of mine was working in home care, and she said, well, you should come and join us for a few months and see, we get a temp job here. And I started working in the elderly care field, and I just loved it. It was like I loved coming home to these elderly people, helping them in their homes, making breakfast, helping them take a shower, taking them shopping, doing their laundry, everything you do in a person's home. And I ended up staying there for a while. Shortly after, actually due to a really tragic incident in our family, my aunt and her husband opened up a nursing home for people with dementia. And I started working there as an undersköterska, as we call it, as an assistant nurse. And a couple of years later, I just loved working with the people with dementia as well. So I realized I wanted to develop even further. So I started to become a nurse. After nursing school, I went to work in the emergency care field for a while to get more experience. But after that, I went back to the nursing home and became care manager there. And after a while, my aunt and her husband retired and offered my sister and me to take over the company, to run it. And so I did for I think about 13, 14 years. And then my sister left for another company, and I managed it for a few more years before I sold it, actually just a year before the pandemic. I woke up in the middle of the night a few times with like heartbeat and realizing, because I was working in the elderly care field during the pandemic, and I just realized, well, the nursing home is not my, like so to say, problem anymore. But it was heartbreaking during that time, of course. After that, I started working for the Foundation Sylvia Hammett that you mentioned, Morten. I worked there for a while. Pandemic came, and shortly after that, because that was, I think we will talk later about that as well, but it was a lot of face-to-face training, education. And I mean, obviously during the pandemic, we couldn't do that anymore. And so I was more or less headhunted to Britannia Stiftelsen, which was in the middle of trying to start to develop a lot more technologies and learning through web system, e-learning systems. So I was asked to come and join them. So long story short, so I've been in the elderly care field since I was 20, which is soon 30 years ago. I don't know if I should say that, but yeah, time flies. Time flies, but sure, yeah, I love it.
I really didn't realize, and I'm just killing myself over that. I didn't realize that where you worked was actually your aunts and uncles, and
yeah,
you and your sister took over and operated the home, ran it for so many years.
Yeah,
that's a fantastic story, Petra.
It really is.
Every inn and corner of running a care home then.
Yes, for sure. We had 36 beds. and having 36 beds in a 24/7 company. We had the same amount of staff, even if it was a Tuesday in May or a New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve or anything like that. And with the 36 patients comes at least double the amount of family. So we had about 36 people living in our home. We had about 50 caregivers, about 100 family members.
Yeah.
So yeah, but we did everything. We had an own chef, our own kitchen. We had our own cleaning stuff. We did everything in house, and since it was ours, we could just handpick all the employees, and people came to us looking for a job because they've heard about us. So it was heartbreaking to leave. I just like, but it was a few years now, so still processing. But it was a good time in my life. But yeah,
I can only imagine, because when you're operating something that's not just a company, but it's a home to thus many people and relations and family members and so on, you sort of become that thing.
Oh yeah.
So to depart from that thing, which is then yourself, it's got to be such an emotional movement. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And my youngest son, is born in 2004, and I was working till on Friday afternoon. He was born on Sunday, and the Monday a week after, that was his first time in the nursing home.
Whoa.
Yeah, but he's had some really good times. I mean, he's been so looked after, and he's the way he communicates and interacts with elderly people is amazing. So with my elderly daughter as well, of course, but him especially, he grew up in the nursing home and he loved it.
He kind of invented the intergenerational care home.
Oh yeah, and
that guy.
I mean, for elderly people with dementia, when an animal or a kid comes in, that just neutralizes everything. You don't have to pretend or be someone else. It's just all natural. So for him, walking around, passing out cookies, serving drinks in the summer and so on, they were so used to having him around, almost like, and loved it. So yeah, it was a really good time of our lives. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
It's great.
It's really great. Yeah.
I was thinking, now that then we've got both a very practical and 360 degrees experience of running a care home, and then you start working with a certificate of ways of working within care. How has that never given you any sort of issues, or are they just one-to-one? Did you do back then what you're now practicing preaching?
Well, when I started working for the Sylvia Hammett Foundation, they already had this program, this certification program that was up and running and working. And for me, it was really rewarding to come to other nursing homes to teach the staff, and I could do it out of my passion, or I don't know how to explain it, but out of me knowing what it's like to be in their shoes in a nursing home, even though you're a caregiver or a nurse or a manager. So, and I could really understand what they were going through, their difficulties, their issues, and also their good times, the rewarding times that you have a lot of when you work in the field of dementia care. But so I could really feel that we could connect, and I loved being out. It was a lot of traveling, both in Sweden and abroad as well, India for one example. But it was really rewarding to meet other people as well. As I said, 16 years working in my nursing home, doing whatever we loved, and I don't think I realized back then, but just the benefits of being able to make your own decisions right now, right then.
Yeah.
But if you're working out in a huge municipality and you think that, it would be great to buy this thing that we have heard so much about, and then you have to ask for it, and then it takes the manager has to ask for someone, for the politicians, blah, 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 blah. It's so many levels. That can really be frustrating, and it's like, oh gosh, I couldn't do this. I could never work in the field of like the municipality where the decision making is so long. But I could really understand what their problems were and their issues. So it was a really good time, and that certification program was really working well. So it was a good time.
And what does it do in terms of achieving a Sylvia Home certificate? What do you need to do?
It's a certification of in knowledge.
Yeah.
So the whole care staff has to get the same training. It's a 3-day face-to-face training for the caregivers, and then there's a day for managers, and also there's a reflection course. So you do reflection training as well, so you can do reflection in. With the caregivers and reflect on what you are doing and how you're working and how everything around the patient. So it's really a certification of in knowledge. But it's working really well. As long as I think if I remember correctly, it has to be 80% of the SOP members that has a 3-day full course, the base course, the face-to-face course. So, but the problem was when the pandemic came that we couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't do these 3 days face-to-face training. So that was really devastating to sit at home knowing also that the situation in all the nursing homes that they needed a lot of training and assistance and help and support at least, or not the least, the support, but yeah,
so
difficult times.
If I can, sorry, it just struck me. Is it very similar to the gold standard of palliative care that's here in UK, or is it very different?
I'm not really sure. Not really sure, unfortunately. I don't think I've heard it. Is that also a training program, or?
Yes, yeah. So that's a framework, and people go through certification. Now I know this because of my previous employer a few years ago, who don't exist anymore now, Sunrise. They went through this framework certification. So no, it would be good to compare and contrast because definitely
for sure.
there is so much to learn.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the thing that I've transitioned into at Betania is that we are developing a certification program in palliative care, but it's going to be all online due to the difficulties of gathering all the stuff at the same time. We're trying to move on from that one-hit wonder, when you try to connect everyone in one room. You cannot be sick during the day, your kids cannot be sick, and there cannot be, all the temps are coming in, you have to go it's difficult to get all the stuff in one room for 3 whole days. It is very, very difficult. And I don't know why, but it has become more difficult since the pandemic.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
For many reasons, I guess. Also the organizational flexibility and the mental model around driving any type of business has just changed somewhat, and to be able to say, well, everybody 9 to 4 every day this week. I think that's changed quite a lot. We also experience it in Sequoia, the blended model for both for learning, but also for implementation situations, that we need to be able to say that there's a hybrid. We can do something where we're all gathered, and then something where we're just slicing it a bit. So I think, I would expect that. And I think it's good to hear that you're looking into different models doing that.
Yeah, well, to me, knowledge is the key to understanding and succeeding, especially when it comes to working with people with dementia. You need a lot of knowledge to know, first of all, how to interact and how to meet with someone that has dementia and how to support their family. But also you need a lot of knowledge about the person itself that you're looking after. What's your life story? What's your needs, what your abilities and everything. So not being able to teach and spreading knowledge and awareness about dementia, it was quite kind of frustrating. So that's where we're trying to looking into more web-based e-learning models that can be a bit more on demand. Also more lectures that can be recorded and sent out. So if you cannot sit in the training room or in the conference room now between 1 and 3, well, we record it so you can look at it afterwards. So no one is missing out, because one of the things that I've realized always also during my years is that the whole staff, the whole group needs the same palliative classes, dementia classes. We need the same knowledge, we need the same perspective. And when we do that, when we have the same knowledge and the same perspective, we can also reflect on what we are doing, the work we're doing. We need the same training for that. So I think it is very, very important.
Absolutely, and I think that's where the beauty of technology comes as well. It has made spreading this knowledge much more easier when time is a constraint.
Yeah. But also, I think there's a fine limit. I met a manager in a nursing home a while ago, and he told me that, well, I just started counting, and I realized that when someone new is coming into our business, we have 30 e-training programs that staff has to go through. Yeah, it's like a week of work, so just sit and go through it. So sometimes we have to be really careful and also selective in what we do and how we use the technology, because it cannot also be like a burden all the time. It needs to be developing and interesting and leading somewhere.
Yeah,
that's a really good point. And speaking of leading somewhere, with all your experience from the care settings and different service types, and especially within dementia and palliative care in Sweden, I now know also, of course, that you're working outside of Sweden. You're working and exporting, if I may, that particular way of working in the certificate. You're working with the Baltics. You said you were working in India. You've been working in other places that we send to. And you've had a role as the CEO of Swedish Care International. What is it that you're trying to export from Sweden? Are we in danger elsewhere, or?
The funny part was that this must be like, time flies. But say 10 to 15 years ago, I was contacted through an organization that was connecting Swedish and care in Japan. So they wanted to come to my nursing home and for study visits with Japanese delegations coming to Stockholm. And at one time I asked them, like, why are you coming to Sweden? And they told me that they had done surveys in Japan, and when they asked Japanese people where they believe the best elderly care is given, or they said Sweden. 80% said Sweden. So that's why they were coming. And it was so, I mean, we have come a long way when it comes to the person-centered perspective in care in Sweden. So I think that model was interesting enough when I came to Japan first time, that it was not developed at all. And also a lot of times, I mean, in India as well, and in a lot of the modern world, we are so focused in me, myself, and I.
Yeah.
But when it comes to working with people with dementia, we need to turn that perspective around. Like, how can I help you? How can I support you? In what way do you want me to support you? So I think that was what I found was lacking or missing abroad. So that perspective came really interesting for me to try to teach and spread. So I don't know if that was a good answer to your question, Morten, but I think we have a lot of good things in Sweden, still a lot missing, but the good parts should definitely be exported. I'm really, really against also inventing the wheels over and over again. So if something is working, that's like, for example, why I introduced you, Morten, to the company in Lithuania, because I know you have a system that is up running and working. Why should we spend time and money on trying to invent things again? So, and in Sweden, we have a lot of research done in the care field, so we know good things that really do work. So we should just spread it, I think, for the patient's safety and sake.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Only because of this, spreading, cross-pollination can happen. And like you say, there's no point reinventing the wheel. And where is the time? Time is the most precious resource, and it's there's such a constraint on time. Why don't we learn from what good things are happening in other countries, and and make it even better?
Yeah, but then you have to be also, after the first time I've been to Japan, I was really optimistic going there. But then you also have to to realize that you cannot change everything in one day. It's
Absolutely.
all about the culture, the care system and everything. But after my first week flying home, I was like, oh, well, if I just planted a seed somewhere and some elderly person or in the palliative care field, someone is getting something out of this, well, it's worth it then.
Absolutely.
But it takes time. Time is precious, but it also, we have to be patient because it takes time.
Yeah.
I 100% agree that cultural exchange is never like a one-to-one, and then you've suddenly got a whole new model. You have to expect it to evolve gradually and incrementally.
Yeah, I think on a personal level, you can really, I mean, meeting doctors from Japan, which struck me really hard the first time I was there, that it is not, if I will say overdo it, but you're not allowed to die in Japan. You're not allowed to die. We do everything we can, even do you have an untreatable disease or whatever, we will not let you die, which ends up people not dying out of ease, out of pain, out of suffering. They're dying suffering. And when we have these, because it's so built into their system, and it's the way that becoming a doctor and even a nurse in most of the countries these days you get trained in treating and saving lives, not helping someone to die. But it's like, when we cannot save your life any longer, we cannot prolong your day, we cannot give you more days, we have to help you die without suffering. So when you have these discussions with doctors one-on-one in Japan, it's like, wow, they really understand the other side of the perspective. And it's many times I met doctors like internationally that are actually crying because like, oh, you shine a light on something that we haven't touched upon before, because this is not the way we are trained. This is not the way our culture is working. This is not the way the system is working. So you cannot change the whole country system of everything, but if you can just meet one person and start working with their knowledge and their feelings, I think is most important.
100%. And I think you're touching upon something in there that I think most often when you meet and talk with people that are working within the field of palliative or dementia care, that well, I've at least heard before that the medical model isn't everything. You need to accept that there are other ways of working with something like death. And I can hear from you that your experience is, of course, something that that shines a light on a way of doing things that I would also say, in my experience as a Dane, is something very Swedish also, that you have a very holistic approach to both running care homes, but also to the people in that stage of life. Is there anything that you would say yourself you find being very natural for the Swedish culture when it comes to that perspective of palliative care? Or is that too vague?
Well, unfortunately, I think we are getting better at talking about death and about dying and death. We are getting better, but we still have a long way to go. Definitely. I think I wrote a blog about it just actually like a year ago, that we need more death in our lives to just accept it, because that's the only thing we all have in common. We're going to die. And in Sweden and in Denmark, we're going to pay taxes. It's like, that's about it. But we're all going to die. So that's the only thing we know. And if I can ask for, like, or have a wish upon where to die, if that is possible. Most of the people want to die at home. Is that possible? Can we help you die at home? Or do you need hospital care to die in hospital? But the way Sweden has changed, I think Denmark is similar, is that like 100 years ago, or even less, you died at home. You died surrounded by your family, neighbors, people who cared about you. People came and likvaka. We had a saying that you came and watched the person die. You were supporting each other, food, cooking, like everything. But now that has shifted, and yet now most of the people in Sweden die in the hospital and in a care bed, sometimes even alone. But I think we need to start talking more about what is important to me. What kind of care would I want? A lot of questions. Death is an important question in existential perspective. Also, it's a life, and it's an important life question. And yeah.
And you're right.
Just before we let you go, Petra, you know that Sanga and I are crazily interested in how technology is supporting both the status quo, but also the development of, in this case, palliative care. Have you seen any movements within this field when it comes to technology over the last years?
Well, plenty. I would say at least when it comes to working with charts for the patient and bringing it like your Sequoia product, it's getting more handy, different things like that, solutions that makes it easier for the staff. Obviously, that has been a big development during the last years, but also different kind of models or things that you can use. I mean, like technical aids, for example, I mean, beds and stuff like that, we have plenty, and also built-in music pillows, something like that you can use for ease, but mattresses that you can lie upon for a longer time to not get ulcers, bed wounds. A lot of things are happening. We can see the invention, and people are really trying to look into the fields of not making things just always go faster and quicker and without people's support. But we will always need care staff, but how can we make it easier for the staff? And also how can we invent things that can make it easier for the patient and the family, obviously also. So
thank you, Petra. I think if possible, we'll include some of those ideas in the show notes so people can perhaps have a look at what you're saying. I've never heard about a pillow with music built in, but I'll definitely investigate that now.
For sure.
So thank you very much for joining us. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Take care.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share your favorite Take Care podcast with your friends and colleagues. Until we meet next week, take care.